Hi, I'm Nia Johnson.
And I'm Naylon Johnson, and today we're talking with our Bonnie Face auntie, Talitha Vickers, who is a news anchor in North Carolina and an author of the children's book, Why My Hero Had to Go. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Being a journalist, there are many different things to write about. So, what specifically inspired you to write about a children's book?
So, I've always loved connecting with children, and that goes back to just back in the day. I used to be a Sunday school teacher, I used to babysit kids in my neighborhood, and I always wanted to find ways to connect with children through books. And as I went throughout my career as a journalist, I just wanted to really get back to my true passion of writing, and why not get back to that with my roots. And one of the things that I wanted to do was really be able to build strong foundations for children with good representation. Because sometimes, like, I remember when I was a kid, I would go to the library and I wouldn't see books that looked like me. I wouldn't see books that had children with my complexion. I mean, they might have been like supporting characters, but I was like, wait a minute, let's remix this, let's make sure that there's representation of people who are like us, who look like us, because every time I would open a book, even for my kids now, it was really hard. I had to really dig and search to find books that look like my children. So I really wanted to make sure that there's representation first and foremost, and then also getting back to my true passion of connecting and building these strong foundations.
Being a public figure, did it make it easier for your book to get published, or did you find there be any challenges?
That's actually a good question, because as a public figure, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm already on the news. Like, I won't have as many hurdles to jump through. And let me tell you, it helped, but not in the way that I thought. So I say that to say, whether you're a public figure or whether you have a passion for being a journalist or being an author, it takes a lot of work. And that's why my book, Why My Hero Had to Go, is actually self-published, because I wanted to make sure that my nephew's skin was not lightened. The book is based off of my nephew and my brother, and having courage and inclusion and kindness and courage amid change. So I talked to publishing houses and they wanted to lighten my nephew's skin. I talked to other agents and they were like, well, let's change the story a little bit. And I was like, no, it's my story and my story alone, because I witnessed it, I lived through it. And I encourage every young lady out there, like, even if a door gets closed or people want to change, it's good to get that feedback. But when you know and believe in something, hold true to that, because it makes a difference. Just because they're not seeing life through your lens doesn't mean that you need to change your lens to fit their narrative. And so being a public figure, I thought, well, my name can hold some weight on its own. Like, okay, this is Talitha Vickers. She's been on television in New York and New Jersey and Orlando and Charlotte. And it was still, I mean, I had to do the work, I utilized the skill sets that I have in terms of writing and, calling and making those connections and networking, because that takes skill over the years. But I had to really, really do. That's a really good question, though, because a lot of people think, well, you're already on television, so you got it made. It's easy. And it's really not. You really have to have a passion for what you do and have tough skin, because doors will close. I mean, I've been a journalist for 18 years and I had doors closing for me on this book. But I pushed them wide open. I was like, back it up. We are pushing through. The door's closed, but I'm coming through the window. You just have to keep going.
Hey. So, being a Black woman and your career being journalism, have you experienced or encountered systemic racism?
I have. And I think whether it's a journalist, I think that whether you're a medical professional, I think across the board, there has to be a change. I've experienced it myself. And that's where I talk a little bit about having tough skin. and just making sure that you continue to spread your Black girl magic and don't let anyone hinder or dim your light. I experienced that with comments about my hair. I experienced that with comments about the way I speak. I experienced that with comments about the clothes that I wear. And I also experienced that with people on the job, positions that I've worked in, where people would not give me the same opportunities that they would give my white counterparts. And it's hurtful. It's really hurtful. But you have to forge forward. You have to speak up, and you have to show that you are just as equally qualified and that your voice matters. Young ladies on this, if anything, if you don't get anything that I say, get the fact that your voice, your story, your message matters, because your talent is so different than mine. Your beauty is so different than mine. And that's what makes us, when we come together and we help each other build, that's what makes us stronger together. Especially as women, we have to make sure that we have so many other obstacles fighting against us. So systemic racism, we've got the outside influencers. So when we can make ourselves stronger by uniting and helping and building each other up, it makes it that much better and easier for the next generation coming behind us. So you young ladies are going to do exactly what I'm doing as your auntie. You're going to do it for somebody else too. You know, you're going to find that opportunity to give back and help and mentor. And that's what it's all about.
Now, we know that you covered the George Zimmerman / Trayvon Martin case. What was your experience covering race-related issues in mainstream media?
That case was very, very difficult because we as the media were in the middle, and literally covering that case, we had people for George Zimmerman and we had people for Trayvon Martin, and we called it that story brings up a lot of emotion. I'll tell you why. Because for the first time in my career, I saw such hate and divide, and I was in the middle of it. Like, imagine you've got people screaming in this ear, people screaming in this ear, and you're just trying to find the balance. Like, I don't mean like they were way over there. I mean like literally in our faces. And we're just like, guys, we're just trying to tell exactly what happened. We're trying to give people the updated information on what happened in court today. Like, just the facts. Like, that's it. I'm not saying you're right. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying your feelings aren't valid. Here's what happened in court today. And that, as a journalist, is difficult to do when people are literally screaming at you in your ears. So that made that case very difficult. But I think overall, seeing the divide was a big eye-opener. You hear a lot about the divide in communities, and you have an opportunity as a journalist to do sit-down one-on-ones with one side, and then a sit-down one-on-one with another side, and then you put what's called a package. You put your whole story together. And at that point at the courthouse, there was no sit down with one side. Everyone was clashing. People were in our faces. People were trying to get in front of the camera with their signs. People were being hateful towards us. People were stalking the families. And that was very difficult to see, because in their grief and in their effort to seek justice, they were having to relive this pain again. And we're human. And seeing that was hurtful too. So there were so many different dynamics to that, covering that story. But again, that tough skin that I was telling you ladies about was something that I really had to really dig deep. And I prayed every time that I went into the courthouse, and I prayed every time I had to do this coverage, because there was an element of anger and hatred, and people were very, very, very upset with what happened to Trayvon Martin, and rightfully so. And people were also very upset with the verdict of what happened in the case of George Zimmerman.
So how has things changed from then to now?
Honestly, a lot has not changed because I'm covering John Neville, which is a local case here in North Carolina, which was very similar to George Floyd. George Floyd was, that was out in a public space. John Neville was in a prison space. Both unfortunately passed away, but under very similar circumstances with law enforcement. But I will say that a lot has not changed. We have a long, long way to go. And I'm hopeful that ladies like you will be part of the change, and exactly what you're doing right now, and asking great questions and trying to get to the root of, well, how did you survive through that? Or how did that impact you? And by hearing from me, hopefully this will help be a part of that change. But I can tell you that it's unfortunate, but not a lot has changed. But I'm hopeful with the next generation it will.
Well, thank you so much for your insight and for chatting with us today. Can you please tell us where we can purchase a copy of your children's book, Why My Hero Had to Go?
Sure. So Why My Hero Had to Go, you can purchase it on my website. It's just my first and last name, TalithaVickers.com. It's a story all about courage, inclusion, diversity, and kindness. And we're all having to deal with a lot of changes right now. And I wanted to find a way for children to be able to connect with that, whether they come from a military family or not. You know, ladies, there are so many books out there that deal with toys and princesses and dinosaurs for kids. But how many kids get exposed to what a military child or a military family goes through? How many children can you look down and say, well, do you know what a soldier is? Do you know what they do? Well, this book really pulls back the curtain and shows children of military families to say, okay, here's where your dad's going, or here's where your mom is going. And even though we're separated by the distance, we're still doing very similar things on a day-to-day basis. So there's a page in the book that says, you know, we're both on our way out the door, but wait, there's more. And they're both walking out the door. The little boy is walking to his school bus. The dad is walking to the helicopter. And they're both living this parallel life and showing a little bit about, you know, what their daily experiences are like. So it's not only for military families, because this also allows kids to be able to see just a little bit of what other families go through. I remember my nephew, he got teased and bullied at school because kids would say, well, your dad never shows up. He doesn't come to drop you off at school. Your dad doesn't love you. He doesn't come to the football games. And it's like, that's not true. Your dad's off doing something really, really special and important. So this allows kids who don't even have a military background to understand why their peers, why a parent might not be with them. And here's that page that I was talking about right there. It just shows like one child right there, the child walking out the door and then walking with the dad, kind of side by side, but in different parts of the world. So it really kind of just peels back the layers. I'm really proud of it. And I didn't set out necessarily to do this. My career has taken me down another path, but I'm so glad that I got back to my true love and passion. So I encourage each and every one of you, like if you have a dream, you've got something that inspires you, press forward, do not quit. Do not give up on your dream. Just keep going.
Thank you so much. There you have it, our Bonnie Face auntie, Talitha Vickers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.